should have known better than to wear the blue dress. Ryan hated when I looked too pretty, said it gave me ideas above my station. But tonight was supposed to be different. Our anniversary dinner at Costello's, the most elegant Italian restaurant in the city. For one foolish moment, I'd convinced myself he might actually remember the woman he'd married 3 years ago, before the late nights and suspicious bank transfers, before his hands became weapons instead of comfort. The restaurant glowed with amber candlelight, all exposed brick and crystal chandeliers. White tablecloths draped over intimate tables where couples leaned close, sharing secrets and wine. I sat across from Ryan, watching him scroll through his phone with the same cold detachment he'd shown me for months. His jaw was tight, that dangerous tell I'd learned to read like a survival manual. "Ryan?" I ventured softly. "Should we order?" He didn't look up. "Order whatever. I don't care." My fingers trembled as I reached for my water glass. The ice clinked against the crystal, too loud in the space between us. At the next table, I caught a glimpse of a man dining alone. Dark suit, darker eyes, the kind of presence that commanded attention without demanding it. He was watching us, though he looked away the moment our eyes met. "I was thinking," I continued, desperate to salvage something from this evening, "maybe we could take that trip to the coast you mentioned last year. Get away for a weekend, just the two of us." "Christ, Bella, can you not be so needy for 5 fucking minutes?" Ryan's voice cut through the ambient music and dinner conversations. Several nearby diners glanced our way. Heat flooded my cheeks. "I'm sorry, I just thought..." "You thought wrong. You always think wrong." He finally looked up, and the contempt in his eyes made my stomach clench. "You know what your problem is? You're a kindergarten teacher who thinks she understands the real world. You play with finger paints and nursery rhymes while I'm out there actually making the money that pays for this dress you're wearing." "That's not fair," I whispered, but even I could hear how pathetic I sounded. The waiter appeared, sensing the tension, but professionally ignoring it. Ryan ordered a steak, rare, and the most expensive wine on the menu without asking what I wanted. I mumbled a request for the pasta primavera, my appetite already dead, but knowing I needed to order something. When the waiter left, Ryan leaned forward. "We need to talk about your checking account." My heart stuttered. "What about it?" "You've been spending too much. I'm cutting your allowance by half. But Ryan, that's barely enough for groceries and gas to get to work. Get a second job if you need more." His smile was cruel, calculated to wound. "Or maybe stop buying useless shit for those brats you teach. They're not your kids, Bella. Stop acting like their mother." I loved my students. Their drawings covered our refrigerator at home. Rainbows and stick figure families and hearts with "I love Miss Bella" scrawled in crayon. They were the only bright spot in my increasingly dark world. They're children who need... I don't give a fuck what they need. Ryan's voice rose again, and this time, I saw the man at the next table definitely watching us, his expression unreadable but focused. "What about what I need? A wife who doesn't question me, who doesn't spend my money on every little thing that catches her eye." "It was $20 for art supplies," I said, finding a spark of backbone I'd thought he'd extinguished long ago. $20, Ryan." His hand shot across the table so fast I didn't have time to react. His fingers clamped around my wrist like a vice, grinding the bones together. Pain exploded up my arm and I gasped, trying to pull away. But his grip only tightened. "You want to argue with me?" His voice was low now, dangerous, the one he used right before things got really bad. "In public? You want to embarrass me in front of all these people?" "Please," I breathed, my eyes stinging with tears I refused to let fall. "You're hurting me. I'll do more than hurt you if you don't learn your place." He leaned closer, and I could smell the scotch on his breath from the drinks he'd had before dinner. "Cala a boca ou vou te fazer calar." The Portuguese phrase, "shut up or I'll make you shut up," was one he'd picked up from some business associates. He used it when he wanted to remind me that he had connections, people who could make problems disappear, people who could make me disappear. "I'm sorry," I whispered, the familiar words of surrender. "I'm sorry, I'll be quiet." He released my wrist so suddenly I nearly fell backward. I cradled my arm against my chest, feeling the bones throb where his fingers had been. There would be bruises tomorrow, Purple and yellow accusations I'd cover with long sleeves and lies about being clumsy. "Excuse me." The voice came from beside our table, smooth and cultured with a hint of something dangerous underneath. The man from the next table stood there, tall and broad-shouldered, his dark suit perfectly tailored. Up close, I could see he was probably in his mid-30s, with black hair styled back and eyes so dark they looked almost black in the candlelight. There was a scar along his jaw, faint but visible, and he carried himself with the kind of confidence that came from never having to prove himself. "Can I help you?" Ryan's tone was dismissive, but I caught the slight uncertainty in his voice. This man wasn't someone you dismissed easily. "I couldn't help but notice your wife seems distressed." The stranger's gaze moved to me, and something in his expression softened. "Is everything all right, ma'am?" "Mind your own business," Ryan snapped. "This is a private conversation between me and my wife." When a private conversation involves grabbing a woman hard enough to leave marks, it becomes everyone's business. The stranger's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. "I'm going to suggest you let the lady enjoy her dinner in peace." Ryan stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. He was tall, but this man was taller, and there was something in the stranger's bearing that made Ryan's aggressive posture look like a child's tantrum. "Who the hell do you think you are?" Ryan demanded. The stranger reached into his jacket, slowly, deliberately, and produced a business card. He held it out to Ryan, who snatched it from his hand. I watched Ryan's face go from red with anger to pale with something that looked like fear. "Blake Santori," Ryan read aloud, his voice shaking slightly. "You're someone who doesn't appreciate seeing women mistreated in public." Blake's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Especially not in one of my favorite restaurants." The implication hung in the air. This was Blake Santori. Even I, sheltered as I'd been, had heard whispers about the Santori family. They controlled half the city's businesses, legitimate and otherwise. Ryan's accounting firm handled several clients who were rumored to have connections to organized crime. Ryan sat down heavily, the fight draining out of him. "I apologize for the disturbance, Mr. Santori. My wife and I were just having a disagreement." "Then perhaps you should continue that disagreement at home, where there are no witnesses." Blake's tone made it clear it wasn't a suggestion. He turned to me, and his expression changed completely, becoming almost gentle. "Ma'am, if you need anything, assistance, transportation, or just someone to talk to, please don't hesitate to call." He held out another business card to me. I stared at it, then at Ryan, whose jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. "Take it," Blake said softly. "Please." My hand moved before my brain could engage, reaching out to accept the card. Our fingers brushed for just a second, and I felt something electric pass between us. His hands were warm, strong, but infinitely gentle compared to Ryan's brutal grip. "Thank you," I managed to whisper. Blake nodded once, then returned to his table. The restaurant had gone quiet during the exchange, but now conversations resumed, though I felt eyes on us from every direction. Ryan stared at me across the table, his expression unreadable. "Give me that card." "No." The word surprised us both. "Bella." "No." I slipped the card into my purse, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my ribs. "He gave it to me. It's mine." For a moment, I thought Ryan might explode. His hands clenched into fists on the table, his breathing harsh and rapid. But then he seemed to remember where we were, who was watching, who was sitting just one table away. "We're leaving," he said through gritted teeth. "But we haven't eaten now." He stood up and grabbed his coat, throwing cash on the table. Too much, I noticed, his hands shaking with suppressed rage. I followed him out of the restaurant on trembling legs, acutely aware of Blake Santori's gaze following us to the door. The ride home was silent, the kind of terrible quiet that precedes a storm. Ryan's hands were white-knuckled on the steering wheel, and I pressed myself against the passenger door, making myself as small as possible. When we pulled into our driveway, he killed the engine but didn't move to get out. "That card," he said quietly. "Throw it away." "Okay," I lied. "I mean it, Bella." "Do you have any idea who that man is?" What he's capable of? I didn't answer. In my purse, hidden in the inner pocket, Blake Santori's card felt like a lifeline, a possibility I didn't dare examine too closely. Ryan finally got out of the car, slamming the door hard enough to make me flinch. I sat there for a long moment, my wrist still throbbing, my mind racing. Through the window, I could see him disappearing into the house, leaving me alone in the darkness. I pulled out the card, studying it in the dim glow of the streetlight. Simple black letters on cream cardstock, Blake Santori, and a phone number. Nothing else. No business name, no address. Just a name and a number, and the memory of dark eyes that had seen my pain and cared enough to intervene. Tomorrow, I would go to school and teach my kindergartners about colors and shapes and kindness. I would smile and sing songs and pretend everything was fine. But tonight, sitting in the car with bruises forming on my wrist, I allowed myself to imagine a different life. One where I wasn't afraid. One where someone like Blake Santori might actually be able to help. I didn't know then that accepting his card would change everything. That the man who'd intervened in a restaurant would become my protector, my salvation, and eventually something I was too afraid to name. I didn't know that Ryan's secrets were darker than I'd imagined, or that Blake's world, dangerous as it was, might be the safest place I'd ever known. All I knew was that for the first time in years, I felt a tiny flicker of hope. And that was enough to carry me inside, past Ryan's angry silence, into another night of survival. The bruises on my wrist had bloomed into ugly purple flowers by morning. I stood in front of my closet, sorting through options, finally selecting a navy cardigan with sleeves long enough to cover the marks. In the bathroom mirror, I practiced my smile, the one I wore for my students, bright and cheerful and completely fake. Ryan had already left for work, his coffee mug abandoned in the sink like everything else he touched. No apology, no acknowledgement of last night. That was how it always went. He would punish me with silence for a few days, then act like nothing had happened, and I would be so grateful for the reprieve that I'd convince myself it wouldn't happen again. But this time felt different. This time, I had Blake Santori's card hidden in my wallet, a secret so dangerous I barely dared think about it. I arrived at Little Sprouts kindergarten 20 minutes early, as always. The classroom smelled like crayons and hand sanitizer, familiar and comforting. I decorated the walls with the children's artwork, creating a rainbow explosion of creativity that made me smile despite everything. This was my sanctuary, the one place where I could be myself. Miss Bella, 5-year-old Emma, ran toward me the moment her mother dropped her off, arms outstretched. I caught her in a hug, feeling some of the tension from last night ease. "Good morning, sweet girl. Are you ready for art project day?" Emma nodded enthusiastically. "Mommy said we're making handprint flowers." "We are indeed." I helped her hang up her backpack, careful to keep my sleeves down. "Why don't you pick your favorite colors while we wait for everyone else?" The morning passed in a blur of paint and laughter, and small hands reaching for my help. I loved these children with a fierceness that sometimes surprised me. Each one was a small miracle. Jamal with his gap-toothed grin, Sophie who always shared her snacks, Marcus who drew dinosaurs on everything. They trusted me to keep them safe, to teach them, to care about their stories of lost teeth and new puppies. During nap time, I sat at my desk grading their alphabet worksheets when my phone buzzed. "Ryan, don't forget to deposit your paycheck, and pick up my dry cleaning. Don't make me remind you again." No greeting, no please, just commands. I typed back a quick, "okay," and set the phone down, my hands shaking slightly. "Miss Bella, are you sad?" I looked up to find Sophie standing beside my desk, her blanket clutched in one hand. She was supposed to be napping, but Sophie had never been a good sleeper. "No, sweetie, I'm fine." I smiled, but she frowned, unconvinced. "You look like my mommy when she's sad about Grandma being sick." Children saw too much. I patted the chair beside me. "Come here." Sophie climbed up, settling against my side with the easy trust of a child who'd never been hurt by the people meant to protect her. "You know what helps my mommy?" "What?" "She talks to Daddy. He gives her hugs and makes her tea, and they sit on the porch together." Sophie looked up at me with serious brown eyes. "Do you have someone who gives you hugs when you're sad?" My throat tightened. Sometimes being a grown-up means handling things on your own. That sounds lonely, out of the mouths of babes. It can be, I admitted, but I have you guys. You make me happy. Sophie hugged me tight. We love you, Miss Bella. I blinked back tears, holding this precious child close. I love you all too, so very much. After school, I sat in my car in the parking lot staring at my phone. Blake Santori's number was already saved in my contacts under BS. Innocent enough if Ryan ever looked. My finger hovered over the call button. What was I thinking? Blake Santori was a crime boss. A dangerous man who controlled illegal operations and probably had done things I couldn't even imagine. Reaching out to him would be insane. But he'd seen me. Really seen me, in a way Ryan never had. And the way he'd looked at Ryan, the fear it had inspired, that meant something. That meant power. Before I could talk myself out of it, I typed a text message. This is Bella from Costello's. I wanted to thank you for your kindness last night. I hit send before I could delete it, then immediately regretted it. What if Ryan somehow found out? What if Blake didn't even remember me? What if... My phone buzzed. I'm glad you reached out. How are you feeling today? Such a simple question, but it undid me. Ryan never asked how I was feeling. Never cared. I'm okay. A little sore, but okay. He hurt you. It wasn't a question. I stared at those 3 words, feeling something crack open in my chest. It's not the first time, I typed, then deleted it. Too much. Too soon. Instead, thank you for intervening. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Can we meet? Somewhere public. Somewhere you'd feel safe. Every rational thought screamed at me to say no. To delete his number. Pretend last night never happened. Continue surviving in the life I'd built. But survival wasn't living, and I was so tired of just surviving. There's a coffee shop on Maple Street. Been there. Tomorrow at 4 p.m. I get off work at 3:30. I'll be there. I sat in my car for another 10 minutes, processing what I'd just done. Then I drove to pick up Ryan's dry cleaning, deposited my paycheck at the bank, and stopped at the grocery store for dinner ingredients. The perfect wife, going through the motions of a perfect life that was rotting from the inside out. Ryan came home at 8, later than usual, smelling like scotch and perfume that wasn't mine. He didn't speak to me during dinner, just ate the chicken piccata I'd made and scrolled through his phone. I watched him and wondered, not for the first time, if he had someone else. If that would make this easier somehow. If I could convince myself his cruelty came from guilt rather than simple malice. I have a late meeting tomorrow, he announced as he pushed back from the table. Don't wait up. All right. I collected his plate, my sleeve riding up just enough to reveal the edge of a bruise. Ryan's hand shot out, grabbing my wrist, the same one from last night. Pain exploded fresh and sharp, and I bit my lip to keep from crying out. Cover those, he said quietly, his fingers pressing into the tender flesh. I don't want anyone asking questions. I am covering them. Not well enough. He released me with a small shove. Jesus, Bella, you bruise like a peach. It's embarrassing. He walked away, leaving me standing at the sink with tears streaming down my face. It wasn't the pain that broke me. I'd endured worse. It was the casual cruelty of it. The way he made his violence my fault, my inadequacy, my failure to hide the evidence of his abuse. I finished the dishes mechanically, then retreated to our bedroom. Ryan was already in his office, the door closed, probably working on whatever shady accounting he did for his mysterious clients. I changed into pajamas and climbed into bed, but sleep felt impossible. Instead, I pulled out my phone and Googled Blake Santori. The results were surprisingly sparse. A few mentions in society pages, charitable donations, attendance at galas, some rumored connections to various businesses throughout the city. And then, buried several pages deep, a news article from 10 years ago about a territorial dispute between crime families that had ended in bloodshed. Blake Santori had been 25 then, newly in charge of his family's operations after his father's death. The article was careful not to make direct accusations, but the implications were clear. He was dangerous, powerful, not the kind of man a kindergarten teacher should be having coffee with, but dangerous to whom? He'd been nothing but gentle with me, and the way Ryan had reacted to his name suggested that whatever Blake was, Ryan feared him. The man who'd never feared hurting me was afraid of Blake Santori. That had to mean something. I texted him again, my heart pounding. "I read some things about you online, about your family." His response came quickly. "And you're having second thoughts about meeting?" "I'm having all the thoughts, but I'm still coming tomorrow." "Why?" I stared at that single word for a long time before answering honestly. "Because when you looked at me last night, you saw a person worth helping. My husband sees me as an inconvenience. I'll take dangerous kindness over safe cruelty any day." The 3 dots indicating he was typing appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "I promise you, Bella, whatever else I am, I would never hurt you. Not the way he does. Not ever." I believed him. God help me, I believed him more than I'd believed anything Ryan had said in years. "See you tomorrow at 4, I typed, then set my phone on the nightstand and closed my eyes. Tomorrow I would have coffee with a crime boss. Tomorrow, I would take the first real step toward changing my life. Tomorrow, everything could fall apart. But tonight, for the first time in longer than I could remember, I fell asleep without fear crushing my chest. Instead, I dreamed of dark eyes and gentle hands and the possibility of escape. Bean. There was exactly the kind of place I'd expected. Cozy and unassuming, with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. I arrived 15 minutes early, my nerves wound so tight I thought I might shatter. I'd changed clothes 3 times before settling on jeans and a green sweater that brought out my eyes, then immediately felt ridiculous for caring what Blake Santori thought of my appearance. This wasn't a date. This was... what? A consultation with a mobster about my failing marriage? A plea for help from a dangerous stranger? I didn't even know anymore. I ordered a chamomile tea and found a table in the back corner, positioned so I could see the door. An old habit from years of monitoring Ryan's moods. Always know your exits. Always see him coming. Blake arrived exactly at 4, and despite the casual setting, he looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine. Dark jeans, a black sweater that hugged his broad shoulders, a leather jacket that probably cost more than my car. He scanned the coffee shop with the practiced eye of someone used to assessing threats. Then his gaze landed on me and his expression softened. "Bella." He approached the table, and I noticed how other patrons watched him. Awareness, curiosity, a hint of fear in some eyes. "Thank you for meeting me. Thank you for coming." I gestured to the chair across from me. "Can I get you something? I'll grab a coffee. Be right back." I watched him at the counter, noting how the barista's hands shook slightly as she took his order, how she didn't quite meet his eyes. He was polite, even warm, but there was an undeniable aura of power around him. This was a man used to being obeyed. He returned with an espresso and settled across from me, his large frame somehow making the shabby chair look smaller. Up close, in daylight, I could see details I'd missed at the restaurant. The slight crook in his nose like it had been broken before. The way his dark eyes held both danger and something surprisingly gentle, the strength in his hands as he wrapped them around the tiny cup. "How's your wrist?" he asked quietly. Instinctively, I tugged my sleeve down. "It's fine, just bruises." "Can I see?" The request was so gentle, so devoid of demand, that I found myself pushing up my sleeve before I'd consciously decided to do it. The bruises had darkened to deep purple, perfect impressions of Ryan's fingers encircling my wrist like a grotesque bracelet. Blake's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. "Does he do this often?" "Define often." I tried to smile, but it felt broken. "Sorry, that's not funny." "No, it's not." He reached across the table slowly, giving me time to pull away, and gently touched the bruises with fingertips so light I barely felt them. "Bella, I need to tell you something, and I need you to not panic." My heart started racing. "Okay. Your husband, Ryan Mitchell, he's been stealing from me. Of all the things I'd expected him to say, that wasn't it." "What?" Blake leaned back, his expression serious. "Ryan's accounting firm handles several of my legitimate businesses. Over the past 6 months, someone's been skimming money. Small amounts at first. then increasingly larger sums. We've been investigating, and the trail leads directly to your husband. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. How much? About 200,000 so far. The number hit me like a physical blow. $200,000. And he'd been cutting my grocery allowance, claiming we needed to save money. I don't understand. Why would he? But I did understand, suddenly and completely. The late nights, the expensive scotch he'd been drinking, the new suits, the perfume that wasn't mine. There's someone else, isn't there? Blake's expression was sympathetic. We think so. We're still gathering information, and you're telling me this because... I trailed off, my mind racing through the implications. Oh God, you're going to hurt him. I'm telling you this because you deserve to know the kind of man you're married to, and because you need to get away from him before this situation gets worse. Blake's voice was firm, but not unkind. What I do about the money he stole, that's business. What you do about your marriage, that's your choice. But Bella, men like me don't let people steal from us without consequences. He'll think I told you. Panic clawed at my throat. If you confront him, he'll know I contacted you, and he won't touch you. Blake's tone carried absolute certainty. I'll make sure of that. You don't know him. You don't know what he's capable of. Yes, I do. Blake leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. I know exactly what kind of coward he is. I've dealt with 1,000 Ryan Mitchells in my life. They're bullies who only attack people weaker than themselves, and the moment they face real consequences, they crumble. I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to believe him. But years of Ryan's conditioning had taught me that hoping for rescue only made the disappointment worse. Why are you helping me? I asked. You could just handle your business with Ryan without involving me. Why tell me any of this? Blake was quiet for a moment, studying his espresso like it held answers. When he looked up, there was something raw in his expression. My mother was in a situation like yours once, before she met my father. Her first husband. He hurt her. Badly. It took someone intervening for her to escape, and she always said she owed that person her life. He paused. I saw you in that restaurant, and I saw my mother. I saw someone trapped, someone scared, someone who deserved better. And I thought, if I could be for you what that stranger was for her. The vulnerability in his admission stunned me. This powerful, dangerous man, offering protection because of his mother's pain. It was so unexpected, so human, that I felt tears prick my eyes. I don't have anywhere to go, I whispered. No family, no real friends anymore. Ryan isolated me so thoroughly. I have properties, safe houses that are clean, comfortable, completely secure. Blake pulled out his phone, scrolling to a photo. This one is in a quiet neighborhood, fully furnished. You could stay there as long as you need. I looked at the image, a charming townhouse with flower boxes in the windows and a blue door. It looked like a home, not a hideout. I can't afford... It's not about money, Bella. This is about getting you somewhere safe. But I'd owe you. I'd learned the hard way that nothing was free. Every kindness Ryan had ever shown me had come with strings attached. Blake shook his head firmly. No debt, no obligations. Just a safe place to stay while you figure out your next steps. And if you decide to go back to him... He paused, pain flashing across his features. That's your choice too. I won't judge you for it. I can't go back. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. I know I should be stronger, that I should have left years ago, but I was so scared and so tired, and I didn't think I deserved better. But Sophie asked me today if I had someone who hugs me when I'm sad, and I realized my 5-year-old student has more love in her life than I do. I can't keep living like this. I won't. Good. Blake's smile was genuine, proud even. When do you want to leave? Is tomorrow too soon? Tomorrow is perfect. Do you need help getting your things? I thought about our house, about the life I'd built there that had become a prison. I don't want anything from that place except my personal items, clothes, my grandmother's jewelry box, photos from before I met Ryan. Everything else is tainted. I'll have some of my people help you pack while Ryan's at work. We'll be discreet." The casual mention of his people reminded me who I was dealing with. "Blake, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "The things people say about you, about your family, are they true?" He didn't flinch from the question. "Some of them. I run businesses that exist in gray areas of the law. I make decisions that keep my family safe and my organization strong. I've hurt people who tried to hurt us first." He held my gaze steadily. "I'm not a good man, Bella, but I try to be a fair one, and I have lines I don't cross. Hurting women, hurting children. Those are lines. What your husband does to you, that's inexcusable in my world." His honesty was refreshing after years of Ryan's lies. "I believe you. You probably shouldn't trust me so easily." "Maybe not, but you've shown me more genuine care in 2 days than my husband has in 3 years. That has to count for something." We talked for another hour, making plans for tomorrow. Blake would send a team to my house at 9. Ryan had a standing meeting every Thursday morning that lasted until noon. I'd call in sick to work, pack what I needed, and leave. Blake wrote down the address of the safe house and gave me a new phone, prepaid and untraceable. "Ryan will look for you," he warned. "When he comes home and finds you gone, he'll try to track you down. Let him try." Saying it felt like stepping off a cliff, terrifying and exhilarating. I'm done being afraid. As we stood to leave, Blake hesitated. "Bella, there's one more thing. Once you're settled, I'd like to take you to dinner. A real dinner, where you can order whatever you want and talk about things other than escape plans." My heart fluttered. "Is this? Are you asking me on a date?" "I'm asking if you'd like to spend time with me when your life isn't falling apart. When you can choose to be there because you want to, not because you need protection." His expression was almost shy, incongruous on such a powerful man. "But if it's too soon, or if you're not interested—" "I'd like that," I interrupted, surprised by my own boldness. "Once I'm settled and safe, I'd really like that." His smile could have lit up the whole coffee shop. "Then it's a date, eventually." We walked out together, and I felt eyes following us, people wondering what a man like Blake Santori was doing with someone like me. Let them wonder. For once in my life, I didn't care what people thought. Blake walked me to my car, a beat-up Honda that looked ridiculous next to his sleek black Mercedes. "Drive safe. Text me when you get home." "I will." He waited until I'd started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot before getting into his own car. In my rearview mirror, I could see him following at a discreet distance, making sure I got home safely. The gesture made my chest ache with something I was afraid to name. When I pulled into my driveway, Blake's car continued past, but not before he'd sent a text. "Sweet dreams, Bella. Tomorrow, your new life begins." I sat in my car, staring at those words until they blurred with tears. Tomorrow, I would leave Ryan. Tomorrow, I would step into the unknown. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, I had to survive one more night in this house, with this man, pretending everything was normal. I could do that. I'd done it for years. This time, though, I knew it was the last time, and that made all the difference. I barely slept that night. Every creak of the house made me jump, convinced somehow that Ryan knew, that he could read my treasonous thoughts. He came home after midnight, stumbling drunk, and passed out on the couch without even acknowledging my existence. I stood in the bedroom doorway watching him snore, this man I'd promised to love and honor, and felt nothing but relief that I'd never have to sleep beside him again. At 6 a.m., my alarm went off. I went through the motions of a normal morning. Shower, coffee, the weather forecast playing on the TV. Ryan woke around 7:30, grunting a greeting before disappearing into his own shower. We moved around each other like choreographed dancers who'd long since forgotten why they were dancing. "I have that meeting this morning," he said, adjusting his tie in the hallway mirror. "The big one with the Cordova group. I'll probably be gone until noon." "Good luck," I said automatically. He looked at me then, really looked, and for a second I thought he saw everything. My plan, my betrayal, my imminent escape. But then he just shook his head. "You look tired. Maybe you should call in sick today, get some rest." The suggestion was so perfectly timed with my plan that I almost laughed. "Maybe I will." "Good. And Bella?" He paused at the door. "I'm sorry about the other night. At the restaurant. I was stressed about work. Took it out on you. It won't happen again." It was the closest he'd come to an apology in months, and once upon a time, I would have clung to those words like a lifeline. But I'd heard them too many times before, and I knew the truth. It would happen again. And again. Until one day he went too far, and I ended up as a statistic. Another woman who stayed too long. "I know," I lied. "It's okay." He nodded, satisfied, and left. I watched through the window as his car pulled out of the driveway, waiting until it disappeared around the corner before I let out the breath I'd been holding. Then I called my school. "Hi, this is Bella Mitchell. I'm so sorry, but I've come down with something and won't be able to come in today. Yes, I'll email the subplans right now. Thank you for understanding." It was surprisingly easy to lie when the truth would sound insane. "Sorry, can't teach today. I'm leaving my abusive husband with the help of a crime boss. Please have the children make their handprint flowers without me." At 8:55, my new phone buzzed. "Blake. 5 minutes out. You ready?" "As I'll ever be. You're doing the right thing, Bella. You're so brave." I didn't feel brave. I felt terrified and exhilarated and slightly nauseous. But I went to the bedroom and pulled out the suitcases I'd hidden in the back of the closet. The ones I'd bought yesterday with cash at a discount store 3 towns over. At exactly 9 a.m., a black SUV pulled into my driveway. 3 people got out. 2 men built like refrigerators, and a woman with kind eyes and efficient movements. I opened the door before they could knock. "Mrs. Mitchell, I'm Sophia, and this is Marcus and Tony. Mr. Santori sent us to help you pack." "Mrs. Mitchell, how much longer would I be that? Please come in and call me Bella." They moved through my house with practiced efficiency, following my directions about what to take. My clothes, my books, my grandmother's jewelry box, the photo albums from before Ryan, when I'd still smiled in pictures, my teaching supplies, because even in crisis, I thought about my students. "What about furniture?" Marcus asked. "The bedroom set is nice." I looked at the bed where Ryan had claimed ownership of my body, the dresser where he'd once thrown a glass that shattered inches from my head. "Leave it. I don't want anything he touched." Sophia squeezed my shoulder in understanding. "Fresh start. I get it." They worked quickly, professionally, and by 10:30, my entire life fit into 4 suitcases and 3 boxes. It was depressing how little I had to show for 28 years of existence. "Is there anything else?" Tony asked. "Anything from the kitchen, the living room?" I walked through the house one last time, this place that had been my prison for 3 years. In the kitchen, I noticed Ryan's laptop on the counter. He must have forgotten it in his rush this morning. An idea formed, reckless and risky. Actually, yes. I grabbed the laptop in his file folder from the home office, the one marked Cordova account that he'd always kept locked away. "These." Sophia raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" "If those are what I think they are." "Evidence," I finished. "Of whatever he's been doing. Blake said Ryan's been stealing. Maybe this will help prove it." Marcus grinned. "Mr. Santori's gonna like you." We loaded everything into the SUV. I took one last look at the house. The perfect suburban facade hiding such ugliness, and felt nothing but relief as I locked the door for the final time. The safe house was in a neighborhood I'd never been to, tree-lined and quiet. The townhouse was even more charming in person than in photos, with its blue door and flower boxes just starting to bloom with early crocuses. Sophia unlocked it and stepped aside. "Welcome home, Bella." Home. The word caught in my throat as I walked inside. The space was beautifully furnished but not ostentatious. Comfortable couch, soft rugs, a kitchen that actually looked used rather than showroom perfect. Sunlight streamed through large windows, and I could hear birds chirping outside. "Mr. Santori had us stock the kitchen," Marcus said, gesturing to the refrigerator. "But if you need anything else, just call. Someone's always available." There's a security system, Tony added, showing me the panel by the door. It's already armed when you leave, and the code is Oro 428, your birthday, Mr. Santori said. My birthday. I hadn't told Blake when it was, which meant he'd looked into me, researched me. That should have felt invasive, but instead, it felt like being seen, like someone cared enough to remember details about me. After they left, I wandered through the townhouse in a daze. 2 bedrooms upstairs, both with comfortable beds and soft linens. A bathroom with a huge tub, and no lock on the door. Because I didn't need locks here, didn't need to barricade myself against violence. A small office that I immediately imagined filling with lesson plans and children's books. I was unpacking my grandmother's jewelry box when my old phone rang. Ryan. My hands shook as I answered. Hello? Where the hell are you? His voice was already rising, that dangerous edge I knew too well. I left. Silence. Then, what do you mean you left? I mean, I packed my things and I left. I'm done, Ryan. I want a divorce. You can't be serious. Bella, whatever's going on, we can work through it. Just come home and we'll talk. No. The word felt like freedom. I'm not coming back. Ever. Bella, listen to me very carefully. His tone shifted to the cold calculation I'd learned to fear. You're my wife. You're not leaving me. I don't know what kind of breakdown you're having, but you need to come home right now before you do something you'll regret. The only thing I regret is staying as long as I did. This is about that man from the restaurant, isn't it? Santori? Ryan's voice dripped with venom. You think he cares about you? He's using you to get to me, you stupid. I hung up. My phone immediately started ringing again. I turned it off and sat on the couch, my whole body trembling. The new phone Blake had given me buzzed. I heard. Are you okay? He called. He's angry. Of course he is. Abusers don't like losing control. A pause. Do you want me to come over? Or would you prefer to be alone? The fact that he asked, that he gave me the choice, made me want to cry. Please come, if that's okay. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I spent those 20 minutes pacing, second-guessing, wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake. But then I looked at my wrist, at the fading bruises, and I knew. The only mistake would have been staying. Blake arrived exactly when he said he would, carrying bags from a Thai restaurant. I thought you might not have eaten, and stress eating is definitely allowed during major life changes. I let him in, hyper-aware of being alone with him in this intimate space. But he kept a respectful distance, setting out the food on the coffee table, waiting for me to sit first. I brought Ryan's laptop and files, I said. From the Cordova account. I thought they might help. Blake's expression shifted to something intense. Bella, that could be exactly what we need. But you didn't have to. Yes, I did. If he's been stealing from you, if he's been lying about money while telling me we couldn't afford groceries, then I want him to face consequences. Real ones. He will. Blake's voice carried absolute conviction. I promise you that. We ate in comfortable silence, and I realized I was starving. I hadn't eaten since yesterday's lunch. The pad thai was delicious, and Blake had somehow known to get it mild instead of spicy. How did you know? I asked. Know what? That I don't like spicy food. My birthday. That I'd need someone here today. He smiled, a little sheepishly. I pay attention. And as for today, leaving an abuser is terrifying. I didn't want you to be alone unless you wanted to be. Your mother, I said softly. She really went through this? She did, and she taught me that the strongest people are the ones who ask for help, who admit they can't do it alone. He set down his fork. You're incredibly strong, Bella. Don't ever doubt that. I don't feel strong. I feel scared, and sad, and angry all at once. That's exactly how you should feel. You're human, not a robot. He shifted closer, careful not to crowd me. Can I tell you something my mother told me? I nodded. She said the day she left her first husband was the day she started living instead of just surviving. She said it was terrifying and painful, and the best decision she ever made. She said she had to learn how to be a person again, how to make choices without fear, how to trust herself. Blake's dark eyes held mine. But she also said she wished she'd done it sooner, that she'd wasted so much time being afraid when she could have been free. Tears spilled down my cheeks. I wasted 3 years. No. Blake reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and wiped a tear from my cheek with his thumb. You survived 3 years. That's not wasting time. That's staying alive until you were ready to escape. There's no shame in that. His touch was so gentle, so different from Ryan's grabbing hands. I leaned into it without thinking, and he cupped my face with both hands, his thumbs brushing away my tears. You're safe now, he murmured. I've got you, and despite everything, despite the danger he represented, despite barely knowing him, despite the insanity of trusting a crime boss, I believed him. We stayed like that for a long moment, and I felt something shift between us, something deeper than gratitude or protection, something that scared me almost as much as it thrilled me. Blake, I whispered. What are we doing? I don't know, he admitted, but I know I want to keep doing it if you do. Before I could answer, my old phone, which I'd foolishly left on the kitchen counter, started buzzing repeatedly. Text after text from Ryan, each one angrier than the last. Blake stood up, his expression hardening. Let me handle this. What are you going to do? Make sure he understands that you're under my protection now, that if he comes near you, if he even thinks about hurting you, he'll have to deal with me. Blake pulled out his own phone. And then I'm going to have a conversation with him about the money he stole and what happens to thieves in my organization. Be careful, I said, then felt foolish. Blake Santori didn't need a kindergarten teacher telling him to be careful, but he smiled like I'd given him a gift. Always. For you. After he left, I sat in my new home, surrounded by the pieces of my old life, and tried to imagine what came next. A divorce, legal proceedings, rebuilding my existence from scratch, and Blake. Whatever this thing was between us, it was real and growing and completely terrifying. But for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of the future. I was afraid of the present, of Ryan's anger and Blake's dangerous world. But the future looked like possibility. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of legal consultations, police reports, and slowly learning how to breathe without fear crushing my chest. Blake had recommended a lawyer, a fierce woman named Margaret Chen, who specialized in domestic abuse cases and looked at my photographs of bruises with barely contained rage. We're going to bury him, she'd said simply. Restraining order first, then divorce proceedings. And I understand Mr. Santori has some additional evidence regarding financial crimes. That evidence, Ryan's laptop and files, had yielded a treasure trove of incriminating information. Not just the money he'd stolen from Blake's organization, but embezzlement from other clients, falsified tax documents, a web of financial fraud that made my head spin. Margaret had turned it all over to the FBI, with Blake's blessing. I could handle this my way, Blake had told me over coffee at my new favorite cafe, a little place 2 blocks from the safe house. But you deserve to see him face legal consequences. Real justice, not street justice. I'd squeezed his hand across the table, marveling at how natural it had become to touch him, to seek his presence. Thank you for letting the law handle it. Anything for you. We'd been doing this, meeting for coffee, for lunch, for long walks through the park where Blake pointed out his favorite spots from childhood. He'd been courting me, I realized, in the old-fashioned sense of the word. Taking things slow, respecting my need to heal, letting me set the pace. But there was an undeniable pull between us, a magnetic attraction that grew stronger every time we were together. The way his hand would linger on the small of my back as he held doors open. How his eyes would track me across a room like I was the only person in it. The almost kisses we'd shared, moments where we'd lean close and I'd feel his breath on my lips before one of us pulled back, not quite ready. I was falling for him. It was terrifying and exhilarating, and probably incredibly stupid to fall for another man so soon after leaving my husband. But Blake wasn't another man. He was nothing like Ryan. Where Ryan had controlled, Blake gave me choices. Where Ryan had diminished me, Blake celebrated every small victory in my recovery. "You went back to work today," he'd noted when we met for dinner at a quiet Italian restaurant. "How did it feel?" "Amazing," I'd admitted. "The kids made me welcome back cards." Sophie cried and hugged me for 5 minutes straight. My principal was so understanding about everything. I'd paused, emotion welling up. I thought I'd lost that part of my life, but it was waiting for me the whole time. "You're an incredible teacher. Of course they wanted you back." He always did that, found ways to build me up, to remind me of my worth. It was intoxicating after years of being torn down. But not everything was perfect. Ryan had violated the restraining order twice, showing up at the school and at my favorite grocery store. Both times, Blake's people had been nearby. Discreet protection I'd only agreed to after the first incident left me shaking in my car for an hour. And then there was the other woman. Blake's investigators had confirmed her existence, Melissa Stanton, a paralegal at a firm that worked with Ryan's company. 24 years old, blonde, and completely unaware that Ryan was married until the FBI had shown up to question her about the financial crimes. Margaret had taken great pleasure in adding adultery to the divorce filing. "He's going to fight this," she'd warned me. "Men like Ryan don't let go easily. Be prepared for him to get nasty." She was right. The court proceedings had been brutal. Ryan's lawyer painted me as unstable, claimed I'd abandoned our marriage and shacked up with a known criminal. They brought up every small argument we'd ever had, twisted every moment to make me seem like the unreasonable one. But then Margaret had submitted the photographs. The medical records from emergency room visits I'd tried to explain away as clumsiness. Testimony from neighbors who'd heard us fighting. Text messages where Ryan threatened me. And the financial records showing he'd been stealing from his own wife while funding a separate life with his mistress. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, had looked at Ryan with such disgust that I'd felt validated for the first time in years. "Restraining order is permanent," she'd ruled. "Divorce is granted. Mr. Mitchell, you are to have no contact with Ms. Russo. She's taking back her maiden name. No contact whatsoever. Do you understand?" Ryan had looked at me across the courtroom, and the hatred in his eyes had made me grateful for Blake's presence beside me. "This isn't over," he'd mouthed. But it was. The FBI had arrested him the next day for fraud, embezzlement, and theft. Blake's organization had provided testimony about the stolen funds in exchange for immunity on their own business dealings, a deal that Margaret said happened more often than people realized. "The enemy of my enemy is my friend," she'd explained. The FBI wanted Ryan more than they wanted to investigate Blake's taxes. Ryan was looking at 15 to 20 years in federal prison. His fancy accounting firm had dropped him. Melissa had given an interview to the local news about being deceived by a con man and abuser. His whole carefully constructed life had collapsed. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I mostly felt tired and sad and grateful it was over. "How are you really doing?" Blake asked me one evening as we sat in my townhouse, sharing takeout pizza like we'd done so many times before. "I'm okay. Actually, okay. Not just saying it." I set down my slice and turned to face him fully. "I've started seeing a therapist, Dr. Patterson. She specializes in trauma and abuse recovery." "That's good. That's really good, Bella." She helped me understand that what Ryan did wasn't my fault, that I didn't deserve it, didn't cause it, didn't fail by not leaving sooner. I took a deep breath. And she helped me understand that it's okay to want to move forward, to be happy again, to fall for someone new. Blake went very still. "Bella, I'm falling for you," I said in a rush, before I could lose my nerve. "I know it's fast and probably crazy, and you might not feel the same way, but I need you to know. You've been so patient and kind, and you've given me space to heal. But Blake, I don't want space anymore. I want you." He set down his own pizza slice with careful precision. "You have no idea how long I've wanted to hear you say that. Then why do you look worried?" "Because I want to do this right." He took my hands in his touch warm and solid. "Bella, I've been involved with you from the start because I cared about getting you safe. But somewhere along the way, it became more. You became more. And I don't want you to choose me because I helped you. or because you're grateful, or because... I kissed him. Just leaned forward and pressed my lips to his, cutting off his words, his doubts, his careful restraint. For a second, he froze in surprise. Then he was kissing me back, one hand cupping my face, the other sliding into my hair. And it was nothing like kissing Ryan. This was fire and tenderness, and coming home all at once. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. "I'm not choosing you because you helped me," I said firmly. "I'm choosing you because you make me laugh. Because you remember how I take my coffee. Because you've never once made me feel small or stupid or worthless. Because when I'm with you, I remember who I was before Ryan broke me, and I like that person." "I love that person," Blake said softly. "I love you, Bella. I have for weeks now, but I was trying to be noble and give you time." "I don't need time. I need you." I kissed him again, deeper this time, and he pulled me into his lap with a groan. "We should slow down," he murmured against my lips, even as his hands splayed across my back, holding me close. "Why?" "Because you've been through trauma. Because I don't want you to regret this." I pulled back enough to look into his dark eyes. "Blake Santori, I have spent 3 years of my life regretting staying in a marriage that was killing me piece by piece. I'm done with regrets. I know what I want, and I want you. Unless you don't want..." He kissed me silent, and there was nothing gentle about it this time. It was claiming and promising, and absolutely perfect. We ended up in my bedroom, clothes scattered across the floor, learning each other with touches that felt like worship. Blake was reverent and patient, asking permission for every step, praising every inch of me like I was precious. It was so different from the mechanical, obligation-based intimacy with Ryan that I actually cried at one point. "Are you okay?" Blake asked immediately, pulling back. "Do you want to stop?" "No. God, no, I'm just..." I touched his face, this beautiful, dangerous man who'd saved me and was now loving me like I mattered. "I'm happy. Really, truly happy. I didn't know I could feel like this." His smile was radiant. "Get used to it, Tesoro. I plan to make you this happy every single day." Later, wrapped in his arms with my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat, I felt something settle in my soul. This was right. This was real. This was the life I'd been fighting to reach. "Move in with me," Blake said suddenly. I lifted my head. "What?" "Not immediately. Not until you're ready. But eventually, move in with me. My house is enormous and empty, and it needs someone to make it a home." He ran his fingers through my hair. "It needs you to make it a home." "Blake, that's... too fast? Too much?" He smiled ruefully. "I know. But I also know that I don't want to spend another night without you. I don't want to drop you off at your door and drive away alone. I want to fall asleep with you and wake up with you and have coffee together while you grade papers and I handle business." The picture he painted was so domestic, so normal, so far from what I'd expected my life to become. "What about your work? The dangerous parts?" "I keep that separate. I've been transitioning more operations to legitimate businesses anyway. Something I'd planned to do eventually. But you've made me want to accelerate the timeline." He kissed my forehead. "I want to be the kind of man you're proud to be with. The kind of man who doesn't have to look over his shoulder. I'm already proud of you. You saved me. You gave me my life back." "No, Tesoro. You saved yourself. I just helped open the door. We fell asleep like that, tangled together. And for the first time in years, I didn't have nightmares. I dreamed instead of the future, of Blake's smile and children's laughter, and a life full of love instead of fear. When I woke up, sunlight was streaming through the windows, and Blake was watching me with such tenderness, it made my heart ache. "Good morning, beautiful." "Good morning." I stretched, feeling deliciously sore in all the right places. "What are you thinking about?" "That I want to take you to dinner. A real date at Costello's." I stiffened. "The restaurant where I first saw you, where I knew I had to help you." Blake kissed my shoulder. I want to replace that terrible memory with a beautiful one. I want to walk into that restaurant with you on my arm, happy and free, and show you how a man should treat the woman he loves. The woman he loves. It still felt surreal, being loved like this. Okay, I whispered. Let's go back to where it started and make it ours. 1 year later, almost to the day, I stood in front of my closet trying to decide what to wear to Costello's. Blake had been mysteriously insistent that tonight was special, though he wouldn't tell me why. We'd been living together for 6 months now, in his beautiful house that I'd gradually transformed with photos and plants and comfortable furniture that invited sitting instead of just displaying wealth. My life had changed so completely that sometimes I had to remind myself it was real. I'd started a support group for abuse survivors at my school, helping other women find their way out like I had. Blake had gone almost entirely legitimate, converting his questionable businesses into legal enterprises and donating heavily to women's shelters and children's programs. We'd become partners in every sense of the word. I chose the blue dress, the same one I'd worn that awful night a year ago. But this time, when I looked in the mirror, I saw someone different. Someone confident. Someone loved. Someone free. Blake was waiting downstairs, devastatingly handsome in a dark suit. When he saw me, his entire face lit up. You wore the blue dress. I wanted to reclaim it, make it mine again instead of his. He crossed to me and pulled me into his arms. You're incredible, you know that. You might have mentioned it once or twice. I stood on tiptoes to kiss him. So why is tonight so special? You've been acting mysterious all week. You'll see. He offered me his arm. Shall we? The restaurant looked exactly the same. Amber candlelight, exposed brick, white tablecloths. But this time, when we walked in, I wasn't afraid. I held my head high, my hand tucked into Blake's arm, and smiled at the host who greeted us. Mr. Centauri, Miss Russo, your table is ready. He led us through the restaurant, and I noticed people watching us. But instead of judgment or pity, I saw respect in their gazes. They knew who Blake was, and by extension, they knew I was under his protection. It should have felt wrong, being known as a mob boss's girlfriend, but it just felt safe. Our table was the same one where Blake had sat that night, where he'd witnessed my humiliation and chosen to intervene. I sat down, running my hand over the white tablecloth, remembering. What are you thinking? Blake asked. That a year ago, I sat in this restaurant ready to accept scraps of affection from a man who didn't value me. And now I'm here with someone who treats me like I'm precious. You are precious. You're everything. The waiter appeared with champagne, Dom Perignon, I noticed, and poured 2 glasses. When he left, Blake raised his. 2 second chances. 2 second chances, I echoed, clinking my glass against his. We ordered dinner. I got the pasta primavera I'd wanted a year ago but never eaten. Blake got his usual steak, and talked about everything and nothing. He told me about a new community center he was funding. I told him about Sophie's idea to create a pen pal program between my kindergartners and children at the women's shelter Blake supported. She's smart, that Sophie, Blake said. Takes after her favorite teacher. She asked me again if you were my boyfriend who gives me hugs when I'm sad. What did you tell her? That you're better than a boyfriend. You're my partner. His smile could have powered the whole city. Partner. I like that. After dinner, when the waiter cleared our plates, Blake suddenly seemed nervous. He kept fidgeting with his napkin, not quite meeting my eyes. Blake, are you okay? More than okay, I'm just... He stood up abruptly. Bella, can you stand up for a second? Confused, I stood. And then Blake was kneeling beside me, and the entire restaurant went quiet. Oh my God, I breathed. Bella Russo. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a stunning ring, a sapphire surrounded by diamonds, the blue stone exactly the color of my dress. A year ago, I sat at this table and watched a beautiful woman being treated terribly by someone who should have cherished her. I intervened because it was the right thing to do, because my mother taught me that you help people who need help. But I fell in love with you because you're brave and kind, and you see the best in people, even when they don't deserve it. Tears were already streaming down my face. You've made me want to be a better man. You've made me believe in second chances and fresh starts and love that heals instead of hurts. You've turned my house into a home and my life into something worth living." His voice cracked with emotion. "Bella, tesoro, amore mio. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that you made the right choice when you accepted my help?" I was crying too hard to speak, so I just nodded frantically. Blake laughed and slipped the ring onto my finger, then stood and pulled me into his arms. The restaurant erupted in applause as he kissed me, deep and passionate and full of promise. "Yes," I finally managed to say against his lips. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times, yes. You've made me the happiest man alive." We sat back down, and I couldn't stop staring at the ring, at this symbol of forever, with a man who'd saved me, and then loved me back to life. "The stone," I said. "It's the same blue as your dress, the one you were wearing the first time I saw you." Blake took my hand, kissing my knuckles. "I wanted you to have something beautiful associated with that color, instead of painful memories. How did you even remember what dress I was wearing?" "Bella, I remember everything about that night. The way you tried to make yourself smaller in your chair. The fear in your eyes when he grabbed you. The moment you looked at me and I saw a flicker of hope." He squeezed my hand. "I remember thinking that if you'd give me a chance, I'd spend the rest of my life making sure you never looked afraid again. You've kept that promise, and I always will." The waiter brought champagne for everyone in the restaurant, courtesy of Blake, and strangers toasted to our engagement. Some of them probably knew exactly who Blake was, what he'd done, what world he came from. But they also saw a man clearly, desperately in love, and a woman who loved him back just as fiercely. As the evening wound down, Blake pulled me close. "There's one more thing." "More than a proposal?" He smiled. "Remember how you said you wanted to open your own preschool someday? A place where kids could learn and play and feel safe?" My heart started racing. "Blake, what did you do?" "There's a building 3 blocks from here. Perfect location, good bones, needs some renovation but nothing major." He pulled out his phone, showing me photos. "I bought it, if you want it, for your school." I stared at the pictures, a beautiful old building with high ceilings and big windows. "Blake, that's too much. It's not nearly enough. Bella, you've given me everything. Let me give you this dream." He cupped my face. "Let me help you build something beautiful, a place where children can thrive and parents can trust their babies are in good hands. A place where everything you've learned from your own pain can be channeled into helping others." I was crying again, overwhelmed by his generosity, his understanding, his love. "You're really okay with me running a preschool? It won't exactly be profitable at first." "I don't care about profit. I care about you being happy, fulfilled, using your incredible gifts." He kissed my forehead. "Besides, between my businesses and investments, we don't need to worry about money. Build your school, help kids, change lives. I'll be right there supporting you every step. I love you so much it scares me sometimes. I love you more, and you never have to be scared again. I've got you. Always." We left Costello's hand in hand, engaged and planning futures both immediate and distant. As we passed the table where Blake had sat a year ago, I paused. "What is it?" he asked. "I was just thinking about that woman who sat here terrified and hurting. If I could go back and tell her that in 1 year she'd be engaged to an amazing man, about to open her dream preschool, genuinely happy." I shook my head. She wouldn't believe it. Maybe she would. Maybe she'd see it as hope, as proof that escape is possible, that life gets better, that love can be gentle and kind. Blake pulled me close. "You're going to help so many women, Bella. Through your support group, your school, just by existing as proof that there's life after abuse." 6 months later, I walked down the aisle in a small ceremony surrounded by people who mattered. My students and their families, Blake's close circle, women from my support group, staff from the shelter we supported. Sophie was my flower girl, proudly announcing to everyone that Miss Bella was marrying her hug boyfriend. As I looked at Blake waiting for me at the altar, his eyes bright with love and promise, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The pain and fear, yes, but also the courage to accept help, the strength to rebuild, the willingness to love again. Ryan was in prison, paying for his crimes. His existence had faded to a bad dream, barely remembered. But Blake was real. Blake was my present and my future. Blake was home. "I love you, Tesoro," he whispered as we exchanged vows. "I love you more," I whispered back. And as we kissed as husband and wife, I knew with absolute certainty that the worst night of my life had led me to the best days. That sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places. That love, real love, doesn't hurt. It heals. I'd walked into Costello's a year ago broken and afraid. I'd walked out tonight whole and cherished. And tomorrow, I'd walk into my new preschool, Bella's Little Learners, and start building dreams instead of surviving nightmares. The Mafia's gentle vow had been kept. I was safe, loved, and finally completely free.